In 2015, President Obama here in the United States, he said, this was like right after the Ebola crisis. He said, another pandemic will happen. And it probably will happen in the next 5 to 10 years. It happened 5 years after he said that, 2020. So maybe the next pandemic will happen in the next 2 years, in the next 5 years. Are we going to say that these things are not true? Are we going to say that the coronavirus is not a thing? I mean, we're going to be making ourselves a big disservice because then we will not be preparing for the next thing.
Before we begin, just a quick intro of peopleHum. peopleHum is an end-to-end, one-view, integrated human capital management platform. The winner of the 2019 Global Cody Award for HCM that is specifically built for crafted employee experiences in the future of work with automation and AI technologies. We run the peopleHum blog and video channel, which receives upwards of 200,000 visitors a year and publish around 2 interviews with well-known names globally every month. And now for our guest. Enrique Rubio is the founder and CEO of Hacking HR, a global learning community at the intersection of the future of work, technology, business, and organizations with thousands of members from all over the world. He is also the co-founder of Cotopaxi, an artificial intelligence-based recruitment platform for Latin America, all in Spanish. He came to the United States from Venezuela as a Fulbright scholar. He's very interested in the digitization of the workplace and human resources, an intersection of the future of work, technology, and HR, and is a recognized keynote speaker. Welcome, Enrique. We are thrilled to have you.
Thank you, Paras. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome, Enrique. So the first question I had for you, Enrique, was you did not start in HR. You were really an engineer before many years. And what changed your thoughts to come into this position today?
That's a great question. I think I love working with people and for people. And very often in technology, you end up being just working with the tech, and sometimes you miss the work with other humans. And I just wanted to be in an area where I was just whatever I was producing was for the benefit of of the people, and I was working directly with them. So I had a short stint in sales, in technology sales, and I enjoyed it, but that was not necessarily my thing. And ultimately, I decided that HR, was sort of the next step for me, and I wanted to try it out and see how I felt working in HR, and it ended up being great. So I've been in HR for a few years now, and I think one of the greatest things about having a diverse background like myself, engineering, sales, and HR, is that there always comes the time when you have the ability to combine all that you have learned. If you have done the same thing for a long period of time, you will not have that ability, because if you're doing the same thing in the same vertical or the same silo, sort of knowledge silo, then it becomes more difficult for you to sort of bring ideas from areas in which you have not been exposed to. Whereas for people who have diverse backgrounds, I think you can always draw from the things that you have learned in the past to apply them in whatever challenge you're dealing with in the present. And I think that's why, being in HR is a passion of mine, but I always very much, love the fact that I had a different background, and I can always bring that background into play when necessary, which is basically every day.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. That's basically giving you different lenses to look at a problem because of your vast and different experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why, whenever people ask me about HR and they ask me, what do you think HR needs to do, to stay relevant and delivering value and whatnot? I mean, I can say 1,000 things, but one of the I encompass all of them in one thing: learn non-HR stuff. Because if we continue doing HR with HR capabilities, then we're making a big mistake, because the world today that relies on HR needs HR to do more than just HR. So let me give you a few examples of that. Mm-hmm. We if you think about the HR, 50 years ago, 30 years ago, or 20 years ago, technology was not as impactful and as disruptive as it is today. I mean, it's always been like that, but right now we see more technology, more disruption, a faster pace of change because of technology. So HR now needs to understand what the implications of technology in the workplace are. They also need to understand a little bit about digital transformation. They also need to understand about agility. They also need to understand about design thinking. They also need to understand about marketing and sales, because HR is in the front line of the business with candidates and whatnot. So when you think about all these capabilities that we need to operate in this new reality of work, a lot of those skills are not core of the HR function. They have not been core in the HR function. So people ask me, what do you think HR needs to do? And I tell them, you have to learn non-HR stuff, because that way you're going to be able to draw knowledge, ideas, inspiration, content from areas that are not necessarily your main background, but when you put them together, they turn into something really, really powerful.
Awesome, awesome. That's a great insight. So the second question I had for you, Enrique, was like, in this new reality of work, there are a lot of transactional tasks, and you were touching on that, which the HRs have to go through. How does hacking HR help in making that better?
That's a great question. There are a couple of things that I think are part of the work that we're doing. One of them is, and this is my belief, which I think we are seeing today because of the coronavirus. I believe that the problems that we're dealing with in the world right now are so complex, so overwhelming, so overreaching, that it is impossible for any single organization, any single city or country to resolve those problems alone. We
Mhm.
need way more of each other. Just think about the coronavirus that we're dealing with right now. The virus started in one city, in one small town in China, and it became a global problem because we live in a globalized world. And because it is a global problem now and it is a globalized world, we should have global approaches and global solutions and global collaboration to solve these kinds of problems. Let me give you another example of that. Climate change. Climate change, it doesn't matter if India is doing something for climate change and the United States is not doing anything, or it doesn't matter if a small country or small city is turning things around when the rest of the world is not doing anything, because this is a global problem. This is not a problem that is confined to any specific region. So because of the nature of the problems and the scope of the challenges and problems that we're dealing with right now is so complex and overwhelming and large, so to speak, in their scope, we need more of a global community to resolve those problems. We need to bring people together. So the first premise of the work that we're doing with Hacking HR is bringing people together, is bringing them together in communities, because the problems that we have in the workplace are also very often are common. They have different sort of flavors depending where you are, but when you think about them in engagement, employee experience, and the way we treat our candidates, culture, coaching, the impact of technology in the workplace, reskilling and upskilling the workforce, all of those things are very common across the board. So we need to bring people together as a global community to see how they are doing to solve these challenges, learn from them, and collaborate with them. So the first premise or foundation of the Hacking HR movement is to build community, to bring people together and build community. The second element is that even if we bring them together in community and we don't know anything about technology, then we're not really doing much, right? Because we could be together, but not being able to learn because we don't know about something. So the second element of our community is that we are exposing them to all things that are important at the intersection of future of work, technology, organizations, people, innovation. This is fundamental. So for us, it is, let's bring people together to learn from each other, to collaborate with each other, to challenge each other, to support each other. But also, as we're bringing them together, let's make sure that we're providing all the learning opportunities for them to know about things that are relevant and important and critical to understand at the intersection of future of work, technology, organizations, people, innovation. So that's what we're doing with Hacking HR, and that's, I hope, what is making a difference in part of the community that we are serving right now.
Yeah, that's a pretty different and a unique take at it. Wonderful. Great to hear that.
Yeah, it's I think that HR has traditionally been very inward
Mm,
oriented, if you will. It's being all for their own company, for what they do, and it's all for they don't necessarily look at what's happening out there. I think things are changing right now, especially because of technology, and especially these days that people are being exposed to larger networks because they are connected online, which is something that we started doing 2 years ago, by the way. I mean,
yeah,
so we were already ahead of this curve by bringing people together online. But I think that now we have a greatest opportunity to bring HR people together in a global community and help them understand all that's happening, help them make sense of all that's going on, and sort of opening more their minds about different ways to do things and to solve some of these complex problems. So I think that's a critical piece of what we're doing.
exactly. Got it. So the next question I had for you, Enrique, was like, what kind of technology do you think can help HR departments in their work? Are there some specific features that the HRs need today?
I think there's so much technology out there right now, and I think I always recommend and advise people who come to me to, before getting into the technology world, to rethink about the HR processes that they have in place. And always the first step in this process is, how can we redefine, redesign, or re-engineer our HR processes before bringing technology? And this is really important because the alternative to that is to have a process and add layers of technology. And when you add a layer of technology, you're going to realize that the technology that you're bringing has some specific features, and then it doesn't have all the features that you need. And then you're going to need to add another layer of process to that in order to make it functional for your organization. So unless you're able to redefine your HR processes, so step back before getting into the technology sort of applications, step back and think about whether your HR processes make sense at all or not. Then eliminating waste and obstacles that prevent people from doing what they have to do in the workplace and from reaching, or unleashing their potential at work. So before getting into the technology application, you got to step back. You got to rethink about your processes. You have to redesign them and redefine them if that makes sense. You have to eliminate waste. You have to simplify and streamline everything that can be streamlined, and only then you think about technology. So when you're ready to do that, you're going to find that there's technology for everything. For example, you think about remote work, one of the simplest things that we're talking about these days. How many companies were unprepared to let their people work from home? And I'm going to tell you how you can test that out. Go to Amazon right now, or to whatever platform you use to buy online, and try to buy a webcam, try to buy a laptop, try to buy a microphone. It's all sold out. All is sold out. Why is it sold out? Because we never prepared for something like this. So you asked me about technology, and I'm telling you, it can go for something as complex as artificial intelligence and machine learning or blockchain, or it can be something as simple as giving your people a webcam so that they can work from home or telework from wherever they are. But the important thing here is not what technology you're going to use. The important thing here is how you are stepping back, redefining your processes, and then thinking, what is the technology that can help me with optimize or implement this process that I already optimized. So I'm always very careful with the technology that I recommend, because I tell people, talk to me about your processes first, and then we're going to talk about technology. And again, I just gave you a simple example about remote work. Right now, many companies were unprepared to let their people work from home, because now we're forced to do that because of the coronavirus. And they were unprepared not only in their processes, but in the most simple technology, which is just having a webcam and having a
Mm,
laptop to be able to work from home. So what's funny is that we've been talking about the impact of blockchain and artificial intelligence and nanotechnology and 3D printing when we don't even have a freaking webcam. So, it is like, I know we have to talk about that, but let's step back a little bit and go to the simple things that we need at work to operate in the most basic of the things that we have to do. And then we continue to think about the most complex things.
Exactly, exactly. You're actually very right there. Technology in these cases is just an enabler. What you need is the right framework to work as an organization, as a company or a department, and then technology just becomes an enabler.
Absolutely. Technology is an enabler. And one thing that scares me a little bit, although I think now we're going to be rethinking about that. If you had asked me 3 months ago, before the coronavirus became, this massive problem and this pandemic, if you had asked me 3 months ago what I thought about, one of the biggest challenges for the world in the upcoming decades or even years, I would have said climate change and technology. Those would have been my answers. Of course, right now, and the reason why I would have said that is because, well, technology is having a deep impact in the workplace. It has the potential of replacing people at a rate that is faster than the new jobs that we can create, or at a rate that is faster than the upskilling and reskilling of the workforce. So I would have said technology and climate change were two of the main challenges and main concerns that I had. Of course, coronavirus happened. And one of the things that I am thinking is going to happen is that and I'm hoping that we rethink about the role of technology to help us, run smoother processes in the organizations, but never replacing the importance of the human. Because right
Mm.
now, at least here in the United States, we're seeing the pain of having massive unemployment. There are 22 million people that have filed for unemployment benefits over the past 3 or 4 weeks. So imagine the impact of technology if we just release some kind of technology that can replace people at that kind of rate. I mean, I think we are seeing the consequences of just unleashing something without having any contingency plans to help people through the transition from where we are today to sort of a different kind of reality. So that's why I think that I'm hoping that we rethink the impact of technology going forward.
Absolutely agreed. The next question I had for you, Enrique, was you do bring together thousands of speakers to your events from around the world. What are some of your key learnings from these events?
Things are changing. I think that's a main learning. Everybody knows, everybody agrees that things are changing, and we can't remain the same. And I have been, I have a lot of conversations with people from all over the world, and I have said that some of the main skills that we need today are our capacity to have mental flexibility to learn and to change. And what that means is that sometimes we're going to need to leave some things that we believe behind because they are not true anymore. And for example, there are people who don't believe that the coronavirus is a real thing, which is ridiculous, by the way. But there are people who don't believe in that because, well, they happen to have read one Twitter from somebody or one headline of one, media outlet, which they didn't even read the article. They just read the news, the headline, and they think that they become experts in that one topic. And so I think we are going to enter into uh, a stage in life that in which it will become more and more important for us to be able to have mental flexibility to learn and to change and to leave things behind. So that's one thing that I have learned from all the conversations that I've had with all the speakers and all the events that I've done. The second thing, which is a combination of two things that I believe are critical for leaders today, is that they have to believe the unbelievable and they have to be able to see the invisible. And let me explain what that means. Very often, if we don't, we have short-term sort of thinking, right? We want short-term results, we want short-term actions, we want everything we want in short-term. And if we don't see, in the horizon, when we don't see the things that we want to see, then we don't believe that they exist. And what happens is that leaders today will need to see things that may be invisible to themselves or to others. How can they do that? They will have to rely on their teams. They will have to read and understand and get in touch with areas of knowledge that are not necessarily their own areas of expertise. Like, for example, I was saying before in HR, if somebody in HR is unable to see the implications of technology for HR and for the workplace, that is invisible to them. But if they are not able to see that, they will have a harder time catching up later than if they were able to see what today is invisible to them. So that's one thing that I tell leaders that is critical. And when I say believe in the unbelievable, what I mean is that sometimes the truth and the facts are right in front of you, but those facts may contradict what you think and what you believe. So then it becomes really hard for you to accept them because you are so entrenched in the way you see the world that you are like, oh, that's not true. I mean, maybe, like you like some political leader, and then you find out that the fact is that that political leader has been lying or has been misusing funds, public funds, or whatever it is. But you are so entrenched in your position about something that you don't want to see those facts. Therefore, you don't believe the unbelievable. And this is very true for the workplace, because in the workplace, very often, the corporate leaders are so entrenched in the cash cow, meaning in what makes money today, that they are unable to see or believe that there may be disruptors out there challenging their business models and possibly putting them out of business. Let me give you one example of that. There is, Kodak. Kodak, the photography company. In the 30, 40 years ago, these guys owned 90% of the film photography market. So they were the kings of photography. And I remember talking to Steven Sasson, who was the guy who invented the digital camera. And he told me, we were just a small team. We went to the executive leaders of the company and we told them, we created this technology and we believe it has the potential to disrupt film photography. And he told me, the leaders of the company said, well, we're going to give you a little bit of money to continue developing the technology, but we think that film photography will never be replaced. What happened in 2012? They filed for bankruptcy. And now, who does film photography anymore? Maybe some, photographers that like that kind of, vintage technology, but nobody does that anymore because we have digital photography. So they didn't see the invisible and they didn't believe the unbelievable. And to me, if, part of the learning from all these conversations is that if we are not able to let things go, if we're not able to believe the facts that we have in front of us and change and learn accordingly, then we're going to be in deep trouble. Another example of that is climate change. And by the way, it seems that these things don't have anything to do with HR, but they have a lot to do with HR. Let me give you one example. Bangladesh. Half of Bangladesh will be underwater in the next 20 years. We're talking about a country of almost 200 million people. So, millions of people will be displaced from their geographical regions. Where are they going to go? They're going to go to India, they're going to go to Malaysia, they're going to go to Singapore, they're going to go to Australia. And many leaders still believe that climate change is not a thing. So if they don't believe that it is a thing because the facts are there, they won't be able to prepare accordingly. And the problem, when it explodes, will explode in their face, and we're all going to suffer because of the lack of preparedness of our leaders. So part of what I'm learning out of this experience is we must be able to have the mental flexibility to learn and change, especially when we are confronted by the facts. And we need to be able to see the invisible, and we need to be able to believe the unbelievable, even when those things contradict the way we see the way in which we see the world or the things that we have traditionally believed.
Thanks, Enrique. Those are really great insights. Thank you so much.
Let me add one HR related data point into that. There's research that shows that between 50 and 80% of employees do not trust HR, which is really painful. It's very, very painful. But there are HR leaders who do not believe that those numbers are true. I believe that they are true. They are painful. They break my heart. And I gotta say, they bring tears to my eyes because I work really hard for HR to be better. And it hurts that people do not trust HR. And I can understand why. So what is the best thing that I can do? Deny the facts? I mean, I can deny them. I can put them under the rug and continue operating in the way I'm operating, and then having even more people not trusting the work that I'm doing and continue making the same mistakes. Alternatively, I can say, you know what? That data is breaking my heart and it's very painful to see and it's hurtful, but I'm gonna change the ways in which I am operating. I'm gonna do things differently. I'm gonna understand why is it that they don't trust the work that I'm doing. And once they understand, I'm gonna be able to change. Does it make sense? So if HR leaders were able to see this data and believe, even if it was unbelievable for them, even if if that data contradicts what they feel or what they think, then they will be able to be more prepared and act accordingly. So that's all I'm saying here, and that's part of the learning that I have collected over 2 years and a half doing this work with Hacking HR.
Absolutely, absolutely. The next question I had for you, Enrique, was like, with the increase in the millennial workforce, the gig economy is rising. And we have seen that contract workers now are there for many roles. How will you explain leveraging technology to keep the gig workers engaged and involved?
Well, right now we're going through the most important, most extraordinary, and unique social global experiment that we have ever gone through in the history of humanity. If you think about all the things that have happened before in humanity, wars, other viruses, the Spanish flu, swine flu, Ebola, they affected a few countries. They didn't affect the entire world. Right now, the coronavirus is putting us in a place of global experimentation. And one of those places, or one of those areas of global experimentation, is massive remote work, massive levels of remote work. Because right now, all of the people that are in the knowledge or creative economy, not necessarily those that work in production or manufacturing, like in assembly lines or factories, but those that work in the knowledge or creative economy, they are working from home. A lot of them will be laid off or furloughed. A lot of them will lose their jobs. Maybe they will become gig workers, but most people that will keep their jobs, they will continue to work from home. So we are now going through a massive exercise of experimentation in which we're utilizing technology like Zoom or many other video conferencing platforms. We are trying to build engagement. We're trying to build corporate culture. We're trying to operate just being remote. And even though, I think there are many technologies right now that can help us do that, and video conferencing is one of them. I think that right now we are learning so much on how to do it well and how to do it at a pace and in a way that makes sense. So, for example, in 5 weeks ago, I don't know when this interview will be posted, but we are almost at the end of April. 5 or 6 weeks ago, when all this thing exploded at the beginning of March, so actually more than 6 weeks ago, when people were massively sent to work from home, it was shocking because nobody knew how to operate working from home. People didn't have the technology. They didn't even have a space in their houses to work. Imagine if you have 3 kids or a dog and a cat or your parents, whatever it is. They did not know how to do that. I think now we're in a place where we learn how to do it, but we're being exposed to an overwhelming amount of online stuff, video conferences everywhere and events online and blah, blah, blah. So I'm thinking that part of this experiment that we're going through right now is that people are learning how to work from home. Companies are learning how to engage with people that are working from home. And we're also learning what the right measure and what the limits are for people to do this work. I think that now, because people are over connected all the time, the line between life and work, we always talk about work-life balance or work-life integration. The life between life and work has become so blurred right now because people are connected all the time, like all the time, even on the weekends, there's like a Zoom call for a yoga and a Zoom call for, do like workouts and whatnot. So I think we're going to get to the point where we are very comfortable using technology for remote and gig workers. Like right now, I think we became more comfortable, but we also have to leverage on metrics to know what the right measure of connectivity is and how to force people to be disconnected. I think we're going to have to, now companies, I think in the future, they will not force you to come to work or to work a certain amount of hours. They will force you to take time off because they will know that the more connected you are every day of the week, the less productive you're going to be because you're going to be so overwhelmed by all that's happening that it will become something more of a liability to them rather than an opportunity, if you will. So I think right now we're going through this experiment, and the technology that is available right now is helping us do this remote work and gig work, but it's also we're learning out of it a lot.
Got it. So the next question, and we did touch on about it in bits and pieces, but if you were to look at it and see the recent outbreak of the coronavirus, how do you think our basic way of life and work will change once we come out of this crisis, really, and hopefully we do come out of it soon?
Yeah, yeah, oh, absolutely. I pray for that to happen. Um, I think everything has already changed. I think nothing will be the same,
Mm,
and people are operating in a different way. And I know people, like, for example, I love working like outside of an office. I don't like to work in an office, but I know people like to work from an office. And I know that when they go back to work from an office, whenever that is, they will be able to appreciate their coworkers better. And not that they didn't appreciate them before, is that we took everything for granted before. We took, if you and I were working next to each other, I took your presence for granted. You were there all the time. And now
mm,
I don't have you. I cannot shake your hand. I cannot hug you. I cannot talk to you. I cannot go for coffee with you. So I think people, first, our mindsets are changing in the way we value the things that we normally would have taken for granted, like being, next to each other. But at the same time, the people who like to work from home or telework from anywhere that they, where they want to be, they will have a stronger case to say, we kept these organizations alive and operating through this crisis while we were working from home and taking care of family business. So you can't tell me that the only way for me to work when we get out of this crisis is by going back to an office. You can't tell me that, because that doesn't make sense. Because we already proved to you that we could operate and that we could do well by working from home or from whatever it is. So that's another change. I think the way leaders approach, their relationship with their people will be different too. And one of the main things that I am seeing right now that I am very pleased to see, and it's part of the gift or the silver lining of all this horrible tragedy that we're going through, is how more human our leaders have become. You know, I was talking to an HR leader recently, and she told me that her CEO was connecting to the company calls from the bathroom, because that was the only place in his house where he was away from his kids and from the pets, and the only way where there was some kind of peace where he was doing the calls. So this leader was using a virtual background so that people didn't know that he was in the bathroom. And the CHRO told him, don't use a virtual background. I want you to show yourself as you are. Because when people see that you're connecting from the bathroom, they will laugh about that, but you will explain what's going on. And you will tell them, you know what? If I am not here, my kids will be running around all the time and it will be interrupting the call. This is the only place that I have. So that leader has by far become way more human than he was before, because he's showing himself as he is, authentically and genuinely. So I think that the new workplace and the new normalcy that we are going to have after this is one in which we will be allowed, and I'm hoping that this is true for the long term, we will be allowed to be more human. Uh, I've been saying that, one of the things that I am hoping is that, we are in a very dark tunnel right now. We're going through a lot of darkness in the world right now because of all that's happening with the coronavirus. And people always say, I want to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I say, yes, I want to see the light at the end of the tunnel, but I don't want that light to be the same light that we left behind, because the light that we left behind was not working for everybody. One example of that is we don't have a safety net for small to medium-sized organizations that employ the majority of employees in the world. There's no safety net for them. If you decide to invest money and you create a company, you hire five people, and then, in a couple of years from now, the economy, there's a downturn in the economy and you start suffering, you already put your money on it, and there's no safety net to protect you and protect the people that are working with you. Whereas there's always a safety net for the largest corporations, which I don't think is necessarily fair. So the light at the end of the tunnel has to be different. We have to create the safety net for small to medium-sized organizations. We have to create a safety net where people, even if they lose their jobs, they get access to healthcare. We have to create a safety net where people are treated, with humanity and respect and love and caring and understanding. In the past, people were, it doesn't mean that it's not happening right now, but there are companies that when they have to lay off somebody because of what's happening today, they do it with love. They explain what's going on. They are very transparent. This is a hard thing to tell somebody, like, you know what, we have to let you go because we don't have any more money to pay you, But if you do that, and then you're giving your CEO a bonus or a raise, then people don't believe that these things are true. So that's the light that I want to be different in the future. And so I think when you ask me the question about what's going to be different, I think everything's going to be different, and everything should be different. And if it's not different, and if it's the same as it was before, then all the suffering and all the pain that we went through was in vain.
Completely agree. It has changed. So the last question I had for you, Enrique, is like any other important sound bites that you would like to leave for our viewers?
I want to go back to the idea of learn and change. Embrace flexibility, a mindset, flexibility, learn and change. Things are changing all the time. We should not remain the same, and we can't remain the same. No matter how slow things seem to be moving around us, no matter how stagnant they seem to be sometimes, no matter how the sameness we see around us, things are changing pretty quickly. And we have the alternative to either change and learn and become more, continue to become relevant and attuned to the times that we're living in. Or alternatively, we have the option to say, everything is okay. Everything will remain the same. 80% of the people it's not that they, it's a lie that they don't trust HR. I think if we choose that path, we are going to be making ourselves and our organizations a big disservice, because we are going to be avoiding the necessary steps for us to get ready for the times in which we're living in. And going back to the point of pandemic, another pandemic will happen. Neither you or I or probably nobody else knows when this is going to happen. But in 2015, President Obama here in the United States, he said, this was like right after the Ebola crisis. He said another pandemic will happen, and it probably will happen in the next 5 to 10 years. It happened 5 years after he said that, 2020. So maybe the next pandemic will happen in the next 2 years, in the next 5 years. Are we going to say that these things are not true? Are we going to say that the coronavirus is not a thing? I mean, we're going to be making ourselves a big disservice, because then we will not be preparing for the next thing. So once again, it is all about learning and changing, because the world is changing and it needs us to be in a different place from the place where we are today.
Wonderful, wonderful. It was a pleasure talking to you, Enrique.
Thank you, Bras.
I really appreciate your time and sharing your views with us. It's for sure has been an enriching and learning experience for me personally, and will surely be for our viewers too. Let's keep in touch and have a safe and healthy time ahead of you. Thank you so much for your time, Enrique.
Thank you, Bras. Thank you so much. Stay
Thank
safe.
you. You too. Have a great
All
time.
right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.